What is good, everyone? It is your guy, Don James, and welcome back to the 5 Years Later series. If you're new to the channel, I'm doing a series where I break down every billion-dollar film from 2019 to get a sense of how well it's aged. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe.
Or else.
No. See, YouTube, what I actually meant was, or else I will give them a free cookie. Dang it! Anyways, today we will be talking about the 2019 remake Aladdin. I literally have no other introduction for this video, so I will just show you the format and we'll get right into it. So as many of you know, following the release of 2010's Alice in Wonderland, Disney began to crack down on making a lot more live-action adaptations to their prior animated works. For a little while, they were dabbling into some of their works from the Golden Age or the Silver Age, but in 2017, Disney decided to start adapting their Renaissance film, starting with Beauty and the Beast. The film was a massive success, and before you knew it, Disney had plans to adapt more of their Renaissance films. Their next two planned films were going to zone in on the two highest grossing movies from their Renaissance eras. That being first The Lion King, and then Aladdin. Oh, believe me, we will get to the remake of The Lion King later. Anyways, for their plans to make the film, they didn't really have to focus too much on crafting a story because, well, they already had one. So they really had to focus on just finding the right people to play them, and the right director to guide the project. On October 10th of 2016, Disney had announced that they had hired Guy Ritchie to direct this film, which was interesting to say the least. Guy Ritchie is certainly not known for making musicals, let alone kids' films at all for that matter. Well, beyond that, they also had to find selections for their three main leads. Starting with Aladdin and Jasmine, the producers had a hard time trying to find the right people to play these two characters. In fact, they had to push back principal photography by a full month because they were struggling to find the right pair. After thousands, yes, thousands of actors, actresses, and auditions, the producers were able to narrow down the role of Jasmine to two women, Naomi Scott and Tara Sutari. Darn, I hope I said that right. We'll just call her Tara. 4 years after the release, Tara actually took to Instagram to share a video of her rehearsing the film's main song.
Tell me, princess, now when did you last let your heart decide?
In the post, she reaffirmed that she and Naomi Scott were the two finalists to play the role. However, the role could not be finalized until they could see how the chemistry paired with the actor for Aladdin. So who was the actor for Aladdin? Well, initially, the producers had strong consideration for two actors, one being Riz Ahmed, known for works such as Nightcrawler and Sound of Metal, and Dev Patel, known for works such as Slumdog Millionaire and Lion. However, they decided that they wanted to lean more towards an actor who was a fresh newcomer. So eventually, the producers narrowed down their picks to three relatively unheard of actors, one of which being Mina Masood.
If you could sort of take me a little bit through it, from the moment like when you heard they were casting Aladdin, were you like, I know I'm going to nail this?
We're doing a general casting call that I'm sure a lot of people saw online and whatnot, and I reached out to my agents and, I said, I think I'd be right for this. And then we didn't hear anything back after my first tape for quite a while, and I kind of let it go. And then 4 months later, we heard back.
Wow.
About the tape that I had done, and they asked me to do another tape, so I did another one. And I knew that they had been auditioning for quite a while, so I was just confident in the fact that, I was going to give them something that nobody else had in the 4 months. So I just took it in stride, I guess.
And you did.
In an interview with Here magazine, Masood explained some of the versatile skills that were required to play the role, including singing, dancing, and stunt work. Also in the magazine, he explained some of his activism work, including making a TV series called Evolving Vegan, in which he explores and tries to pontificate on how meat eating affects the environment. Anyways, beyond the rigorous work required for the role, Masood also had to test out his chemistry with the actress candidates for Jasmine.
What's that like then with the meeting then too? Did you guys go out to lunch? You kind of figure out what it is, like, or you just do the read up top first?
Yeah, when we were testing, we didn't spend too much time together, but we got along right away. She's a very similar energy to mine. Out of anyone else on the cast and crew, I spent the most time with her. We actually lived in the same apartment building, so we'd go to each other's flats for lunch and dinner and just, talk.
Read lines and stuff.
Did you test with anybody else?
I did, yes.
And were you rooting for her?
Yeah, I knew Naomi was the right person for it. She was just the strongest actress and singer. The other people testing, they were either strong actors or strong singers, but they weren't, they didn't have both.
After all of this, Disney announced Masood and Naomi Scott as the finalists for Aladdin and Jasmine at the D23 2017 Expo. However, the biggest casting question people had was, who was going to play the Genie? In the 1992 original, Robin Williams gave one of the most iconic and acclaimed voice performances ever, leaving many to wonder how that performance could ever be replicated.
Impressive. But never Genie.
This was a challenge that the primary producer, Dan Lin, really struggled with. He needed to find someone who was able to show charisma, sing, dance, be funny, and dramatic. The role required an immensely versatile amount of talent, even more so than the role of Aladdin, especially when going up against the iconic nature of the original. Eventually, Dan Lin zoned in on Will Smith. When explaining his casting decision, Lin said, "Will Smith, if you look closely at the Genie, is influenced by what he did so well in The Hitch and what he did so well with Fresh Prince. This is a hip-hop Genie, and so it's very specific to Will. No other actor could have done this the way he did, in the same way no other actor could have done the Genie the way Robin Williams did. They are so iconic, and so the way Will interpreted the Genie was to make an iconic character that only he could play that is very true to himself. And that's what really excited us and allowed us to differentiate and stand out from the previous Aladdin movie." Well, to no surprise, the public was not on board with this at all. If there's one thing these 2019 billion-dollar films taught us, it's that when you dabble into people's nostalgia, you can generally expect two things: a lot of money and a lot of backlash. Following the release of the first trailer, many fans drew heavy criticism at the CGI on Will Smith's Genie. Well, the movie pushed onward anyway. Also, they cast this guy as Jafar, who was nicknamed around the internet as Hot Jafar. Anyways, principal photography took place from September 6, 2017 to January 24th, 2018. Most of the filming took place in the UK, but some of it they actually traveled to Jordan to film the scenes in the desert. By the time this film was set for release, it had its world premiere at the Grand Rex in Paris on May 8, 2019, and then later was released theatrically to the US on May 24th. When Aladdin was finally released, I think one safe thing to say is that this movie was better received than initially expected. Given its pre-release controversies, the negative backlash to the trailer, and the inherent nature of retelling a classic story, this movie was not trashed or anything when it came out. Now, it didn't get a great review on Rotten Tomatoes. It only got like a 57% from critics. But that's still a good bit above a 50, and it shows more of a mixed response than an outright negative one, despite the rotten symbol. I mean, even reading the consensus, it's not super negative. Nonetheless, audience members enjoyed this movie a good bit more than critics did. With a solid 89% consensus, the audience gave high praise to the soundtrack, the visuals, and the cast. At least when reading the consensus. But when looking at both of these groups, it really just looks like their biggest criticism was just it wasn't as good as the original, which would be expected. IMDb was also relatively positive on this movie, with a 6.9 out of 10. Now, IMDb's star rating system can be kinda confusing. Like, in what universe does Farts 2 get a 6.2 out of... Anyways, a general rule of thumb is that a 7-star or higher would be considered a good movie. So a 6.9 would kind of be an above average rating. Also, I broke down IMDb beyond its user rating. I also looked at the user reviews, and usually the most telling numbers is 10 out of 10, 6 out of 10, and 1 out of 10, as the 10s pretty much show the positive, the 6s tend to show the in the middle, and the 1s tend to show the negative. So, as you can see, the 10 out of 10s got almost a quarter of the reviews, the 6 out of 10s got about 7%, and the 1 out of 10s got about 5%. So, generally a pretty positive reception from the user reviews. And Metacritic kind of followed the mixed reception of Rotten Tomatoes critics with a 53, but the audience was more positive, or at least mixed positive, with a 6.5. So yeah, critics took more issue with this film. It seemed like they were looking for a fresher story that justified its existence, whereas audience members seemed to view it more so as a nice, lighthearted, nostalgic popcorn entertainment film. Moving on to some other 2019 reviews, I wanted to move to some YouTube channels. So my main desire was to find YouTube channels that ranked the Disney remakes in 2019 and also ranked them again after the latest release, but I wasn't really able to find that many that did that. So instead I just focused on 2019 reviews of the movie. So here were the 5 channels that I chose. I chose Sean Chandler, Shafrillis Productions, Jeremy Johns, Chris Stuckman, and Super Carlin Brothers. So I'll run through these pretty quickly, then summarize. Sean Chandler gave the film a B-. Shafe gave it a 5 out of 10, but recommended it. For the Carlin Brothers, one of them gave it a 67, while the other gave it a 76. Chris Stuckman was more negative, gave it a C-, and Jeremy Johns said it would be better if he were drunk. So I guess when it's all said and done, the overall aggregation of these 6 reviews I'd say is a B- to a C+. Like, I guess it's kind of hard to really aggregate these together because they use different rating systems. Which is why we need to consolidate the rating system and force every movie reviewer to give a rating on a scale of 1 to 1,765,385,000. Anyways, on an added note, one thing that I really liked that the Carlin Brothers did was that they added another ranking and analysis of the 2019 Disney films at the end of the year, which provided an update on their thoughts on the film. And in their 2019 video, they included every billion-dollar film from that year, except for Joker. So yeah, they'll be showing up more in some of my later analyses. In that video, they compared their ratings that they gave to the movie right out of theaters to the ratings that they would give it at the end of the year. So according to their lists, both of them ranked Aladdin at number 7 on their first viewing. And at the end of the year, both of them still had Aladdin at number 7. So that just sums up a little bit of the passage of time for them. So from these 6 reviews, I summed up 3 general strengths and 3 general weaknesses across the board. So 3 general strengths that were mentioned were that Will Smith was solidly entertaining, Jasmine had a fantastic song and had more depth, and it had a good bit of funny moments. As for the weaker moments, a common critique was that the movie didn't do enough to justify its existence and feel distinct, as well as Jafar and sometimes Aladdin felt pretty flat, and the CGI and green screen effects sometimes looked horrible or clunky. In general, the YouTube reviews display quite a mixed bag, and overall I'd just say that in 2019, when aggregating everything all together, the reception for Aladdin was fun, but unimpressive. It didn't really do enough to really distinguish itself and justify its existence, so therefore it just offers a lot of the same highs and fun as the original, just at a discounted price. Hence why a lot of people probably forget that this was even a billion-dollar movie. It's also why it kind of got lumped into the general malaise, criticism, and cynicism of Disney's remakes. Well, it's 2024 now. So what do people think now? When looking at audience reception, I mainly try to use the aggregates from Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, really just filtering out just the reviews from 2024. So starting with... What are you doing back here?
I'm Oppenheimer.
What the... Excuse me a sec. Alright. So as of 2024, Rotten Tomatoes has 16 reviews, and averaging all of it together, it comes to a 3.31 out of 5 stars. That's a pretty decent score. That's kind of in the good above average zone. And moving on to IMDb, there were only 12 reviews actually, but the average scores were still rock solid, with a 6.92 out of 10. So when combined together, these two have basically the same average score from the audience, just IMDb is using a doubled scale. Also, I wanted to use some YouTubers to get a little sample size of the reception now. So the best way to utilize this is to look at YouTubers who've ranked the remakes within the span of Pinocchio or The Little Mermaid. So I mainly picked from the top YouTubers that showed up in the search results, which of course could be impacted by the algorithm in my search history, but it doesn't need to be exactly accurate, it's just a sample. So I utilized these 5 YouTubers, you can see their names below. And yeah, just so you know, Sean Chandler's going to be pretty much every one of these videos because he's a very popular and mainstream YouTuber, and he's made multiple updated rankings from 2019 to 2024. So, in 2019, he had Aladdin ranked at number 6, citing it as a movie that lent itself very well to a live-action format, and that improved on repeat viewings for him. Well, clearly those rewatches just kept getting better with time, because he had it all the way from number 6 to number 1. He just spoke of how impressive it was how the movie just continued to grow on him until eventually becoming his favorite of the live-action films. So clearly it aged dang it, I keep stuttering! Impeccably... Okay, let me just start that sentence over. Clearly that in order to save Don James from a mental breakdown, we'll just write out what he was trying to say. Next, I used Dan Morell, who used to work for Screen Junkies and actually reviewed the film back in 2019. And he said he mostly kinda enjoyed it. In a ranking that he did following the release of The Little Mermaid, he had Aladdin ranked at number 4. He only had 14 movies on his list, but yeah, pretty much all these people that I'm gonna use are gonna have different amounts of movies on their rankings because, you know, people consider live action remakes in different categories. Like some might just be anything live action, some people do only if it's specifically remaking a classic, so it's complicated. Next, I used a channel called Brittany Reacts. She created a tier list following the release of Little Mermaid, and on this tier list she had 7 tiers. So of these 7 tiers, where did she put Aladdin? Which, by the way, only one other movie went on this tier, and nothing was in the awesome tier, so pretty much these were her top 2 remakes. So clearly a high view of this film. The next person that I used was Zach Pope. The good thing about this guy is that he also gave a ranking in 2019, as well as when The Little Mermaid came out. In 2019, he had Aladdin ranked at number 2, which is obviously very solid. And in his most recent ranking after The Little Mermaid, he had it at number 5, so took a little bit of a drop, but also when you look at his number 1 movie, it's Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers? Look, if I was doing some kind of remake ranking, that would be my number 1 too, but since it's not generally considered a remake, if you just exclude that, he basically has Aladdin at number 4, so still a bit of a drop, but not as much. Lastly, I used the YouTuber Aldone, who had Aladdin at number 8 on his list, but he did describe it as a terrible movie. He was the most negative of all of them. He was not a huge fan of how much they tried to put Jasmine in the spotlight, as he felt it should have focused more on Aladdin. which the point of Jasmine's increased presence was also mentioned by the Carlin brothers in their review, but they mentioned it as a positive thing.
I love Naomi
That is Jasmine. She's definitely
the star of the show.
she is. And her song.
It is awesome. It is probably
So, as you can tell, this movie still has certain mixed elements on some of the same topics. Also, I wanted to show some website companies that have up-to-date rankings of the Disney remakes, because I feel like website companies tend to show more of the critic perspective. So here were the 5 companies that I chose. Also, I put in parentheses the general reception that these companies implied by their reviews. So, USA Today had it ranked at number 11. Vulture had it ranked as well as number 11. Collider had it ranked at number 9. Polygon had it ranked at number 7. And IndieWire had it ranked at number 9. Overall, from these critic reviews, I would say that it's more of a mixed to mixed positive reception, which is, I guess, an improvement over the mixed to mixed negative perception in 2019. And lastly, I wanted to include Disney Amino. I always just like to include them as just like extra data for the video. So I ran a poll a couple weeks ago asking people their thoughts on the movie now, and I got 27 responses. Here are the results. Aladdin's legacy is complicated. Right off the bat, it's safe to say that Aladdin's reputation has actually improved with time. When it first came out, many people, both critics and audiences, had entered the theater expecting not to like it, and left feeling relatively unfazed. Which, as a general rule of thumb, if someone goes into a movie expecting not to like it, they are way more likely not to like it. Toy Story 4. Oh, excuse me. Wow. Must have been a cold or something. But that's not to say that Aladdin is a great movie or anything, but it more explains some of the mixed feedback that it got from 2019. However, I think that with time people have grown much more appreciation for this movie, especially with the amount of dumb remakes that they've released since. I mean, it could pretty much go without saying that most people who saw it definitely liked the original more than this one, but they still appreciated it in its own right. Like, it still has a certain level of just passive fun and translated well to live action, even if it was unnecessary. And by the way, did I mention Speechless? Getting nearly 500 million views for an original song not from this classic material from a person not exclusively known as a singer is a massive feat. However, on the other end, Aladdin is still kind of a forgotten movie, which is kind of a testament to the general nature of most of Disney's live-action films, especially those that mostly follow the template of their original work. That's one of the reasons why Cinderella and The Jungle Book are probably the most well-known and remembered of the live-action films. And even though people do like Aladdin, and a lot of people do have it as one of their favorites, but there's still a lot of people that don't. A lot of people do still view this as a forgettable cash grab, hence why it's kind of a mixed positive film overall. Even a lot of people that do like it still do say that it doesn't do a whole lot to necessarily distinguish itself, but it still is very fun and it has worthy entertainment in its own right. But if they were ever in a mood to like watch Aladdin, they would always go to the original. Again, we're 5 years removed from this movie, and it's like very rarely talked about. Like, I actually tried to archive and filter YouTube to only find people talking about Aladdin, and I could barely find a single thing. I mean, even something like the Lion King remake, like, even that still has a certain level of memorability because it's the highest grossing animated film of all time. Plus, it has a more notorious reputation that I'll dive into in a later analysis. The Aladdin remake isn't memorably great, nor memorably awful. It's just kind of there. Hence why it's probably the most forgotten billion-dollar film from 2019. But overall, it's still safe to say that Aladdin did do something kind of significant for Disney because it actually got better with time. It was a remake that actually improved with time. Most of these remakes are designed to age poorly because they just copy the original just to bank off people's nostalgia, and then they just become irrelevant crap. And though Aladdin is rather forgotten, it still did improve with time. It didn't get worse. So yeah, its legacy is kind of complicated, but it did certainly make Disney a lot of money, and it also did manage to be one of the few bright spots in the Disney live-action era, and a film that fans may not be rushing to re-watch, but certainly find perfectly watchable and entertaining. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Next video up will be Toy Story 4, and yeah, that definitely is going to be an interesting one. Thank you all for watching, and I will definitely catch you in the next video.